Talk over drink.
Talks over drinks.
All right, we are back. Talks over drinks. My name is Corey Fauconier. I'm your host, and as always, my partner in justice to God, Markel Prines. How are you this evening, Markel?
I'm doing great, brother. And it's bad that we can't see you right now. We see the Talks Over Drinks logo, but we know you got a bad reception, but everything's all good. How you doing out there?
I'm good, man. I'm getting that. I'm gonna get that Elon Musk internet for my truck, and then we're not gonna have this problem no more.
Yeah,
If
I
he
hope it
can,
lives
if,
up.
if he can rescue people out of space, Elon Musk is okay with me. So that's what it is. You got your food for action today.
Yeah. So today I asked Chat GPT to help me out since I know that's a topic of discussion for a lot of people with the AI stuff nowadays. So it gave me 10. So I'm gonna start off with the first one because the first one I really like. And I agree with absolutely. Move in silence, let your actions speak, and your success will echo through every path you've walked. So
Okay.
that right there is fact. And we talk about that on the regular. Once when you show your actions and once people see your actions, that basically echoes louder than anything you can actually say or tell people that you're going to do. So actions speak louder.
I got you. Well, that's powerful. We appreciate that. And as always, my brother of another color, Jeff Kleb. Jeff, how are you this evening, sir?
All right, all right. I like that fortune cookie opening by Markel. Way to go, Grasshopper. I like that. But that sounds like something Yoda would say, but I like it. It's like, do good unto others, and they will do good unto you. But anyway, I hope everybody's doing okay tonight. We're
Yes.
one week away from, you know, whether we're going to become a dumpster fire or a train wreck. And hopefully we won't have to wait 5 days to find out.
Yes, that's right. And we might be a dumpster fire and a train wreck.
Yeah, a dumpster on the rails going over the cliff.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's right. My emphasis tonight's going to be, I guess I should let Corey introduce me to everybody before I say something.
Let's get the last two people, as always.
Let's get everybody introduced and then I'll
You're
say
right.
something.
You're right.
So I apologize for jumping in.
That's okay. My libertarian brother, Josh Huffman. Josh, how are you today? How is the cat?
Oh, doing well. Doing well. Greetings from the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia.
All right. How was your day?
Pretty good. Just listing more stuff on eBay. Just trying to downsize stuff that I have. So, you never know what you'll find on there.
Okay. Well, we have to check eBay and support the Going to Australia fund. So we will definitely do that. Good to have you.
Thank you.
And last but not least, everyone's favorite Nazarene attorney, Elwood Sandy Sanders. Sandy, how are you today?
We're doing fine. We're blessed by Jesus more than we deserve. And I say that because it's true. And sometimes it becomes a cliche, but lately it's been really true. So I'm thankful.
Do you have your camera on? I can't see you.
Probably not, because you're almost asking me to do more things than I know how to do. But I will try to see if we can work on getting that accomplished. I can assure you that you're not missing anything if you don't see my face. But nonetheless, it's I want to emphasize tonight the third party candidates. And I know that it's not going to be a comprehensive thing because there's a lot of third party candidates on the ballot, a lot of places. But those third party candidates sometimes become critical for ballot access.
True.
And the Libertarians have had this wonderful record. That's one reason I think Bobby Kennedy made an abortive attempt to get the Libertarian nomination, because he knew the Libertarians were going to be pretty close to all 50 states and he wouldn't have to really do anything. He just could get elected. But I think he was too much of a statist to to be considered seriously by libertarians. So he was rightly, but he did get on the ballot for president and was almost immediately removed from the ballot by the vote.
Now, I did not know that he was, I guess, in the running to become a libertarian. I did notice while I was doing some research that there were libertarians for Bobby Kennedy. So, Josh or Jeff, what do you guys think? Why the party didn't decide to go with Kennedy instead of the current ticket?
Well, go ahead, Josh.
Okay. Well, just briefly, I would say, for starters, now, unlike Donald Trump, he at least joined the party before seeking the party's nomination. So I do appreciate that. And I know, of course, in recent elections, the Libertarians have gone with fairly well-known candidates. For example, of course, in the past in two earlier presidential elections, we had former New Mexico Gary Johnson. But really, I don't think there's enough libertarian message to RFK. Now, I think he has some libertarian tendencies, but he has a heck of a lot more. We love big government so long as we're in charge of it, at least in my opinion. So that's probably what happened.
He seems to be repenting some. Yeah. He's talking about food freedom. So I'm appreciative of all of that. But the Libertarians had a wild convention for sure. It was actually, I actually watched some of it, and we'll just have to see how that goes. Believe it or not, I also have the website of the Green Party US. So they have some candidates to support. I probably wouldn't vote for any of them personally, but I admire them being on the ballot.
I agree.
And I will tell you that Puerto Rico has been in the news the last few days because of an very unfortunate thing that happened. But I always feel like sometimes the curse can turn into a blessing. And Puerto Rico's having an important election for governor. And the independence candidate actually has a chance to win. Now, his views can only be described as socialist. However, I do think Puerto Rico should be independent, subject to certain rules and guidelines, because Puerto Rico acquired so much national, I'll call it state debt, for lack of a better term, government debt, that they were in danger of defaulting on their obligation. And so the Congress came in and basically took their power away from them and put it into the hands of a board, an unelected board. And so what that did is it radicalized a lot of Puerto Ricans to say, well, if we're not really going to get to run our government, maybe we should be independent. And so I think you're going to see some interesting stuff's going to happen with that. So that's kind of my first thing. I've already let him know that I support independence. So if he wants to use my name to say, there's at least one gringo for independence for Puerto Rico. And I take the position that Puerto Rico should be independent because they're a people group. They're a nation. They're a proud nation with a proud heritage, language of Spanish, which is, in my view, more beautiful than English sounding anyway. And of course, history. And I think it might remove some of that colonial mentality. And so I'd like to see I'd like to see independence be seriously, because it has to be seriously discussed in America as well as seriously discussed in Puerto Rico. So it would do them good if the guy can win to say, all right, Sandy, what do we do now? But I'm not anticipating any phone calls from the incoming governor of Puerto Rico, provided that he wins. He's only 2 points behind the statehood candidate. But I think he's coming on strong.
What's his name?
Let me look it up. I should have known that you were going to ask me that, but that's okay. I will look it up. If you want to turn to somebody else for a moment while I look it up.
Jeff, your perspective on Puerto Rico?
I have no problem if they decide to become an independent country. I mean, right now they're a commonwealth, a territory. It would be far less of a drain on the taxpayers of the United States if they did become an independent country, because we are footing the bill for their national defense, essentially. Even though they kicked the Navy out, they're part of the United States. So if, let's say, Cuba invaded Puerto Rico or something, we would be obligated to protect them. I did serve in the Army with some Puerto Ricans. They were great soldiers, but I don't think making them a state is a really good idea. Keeping them the same, that's probably not going to ruffle any feathers. If they wanted to become an independent nation, then they would have to do it totally and foot their own bill. And before they
Sure. And I think they should pay their own debt too.
Yeah,
But,
exactly.
The man's name is Juan Dalmau, Jamu. And I hope I'm not mispronouncing it. He's the candidate of Puerto Rico Libre, which is, I think they merged two parties together to run together as a coalition. And I am following him along with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. That just shows you how politics can make strange bedfellows sometimes.
Can we
Sandy and AOC agree on something?
Well, can we get Puerto Rico to become an independent country and take AOC with them as part of the deal?
Yes, I agree with you. Maybe she would like to be a president instead of just a congressman.
You know what
Did
AOC
you know that
stands
there's an
for?
asteroid? Did you know that there's an asteroid named after Ocasio-Cortez, and the reason it happened is because she came in second in a national science fair in high school, and the people were so impressed with her project that somebody named an asteroid after her. Thankfully, it doesn't appear to be an Earth grazer, so we're thankful for that.
Well, that's
But
good.
that's a little known fact that most people probably don't know.
I thought her name was AOC for All Out Crazy.
All out crazy. Well, yes, but I can admire her for I believe that she's in politics for the right reasons. I just think she's wrong on a lot of things.
I agree with that. And she ran a hard campaign and she won that seat fair and square.
Yeah,
She
but
did against a long-time incumbent who was rumored to be the speaker.
Yeah,
A potential candidate for speaker.
He underestimated her.
He underestimated her. I agree with you.
But not only that, the Republicans, there was a gentleman that ran, I think his name was Terrence. I have to look that up. He was a really good Republican candidate, but the party didn't put any money behind him, and he wasn't able to, get the type of, I guess, leverage and support from the Republicans that he should have. But he was
not in that district.
Candidate. Yeah.
No.
See, that makes me think about just posing a question to you guys about what do you see would be the best way or the best steps for any political party, or of course, let's focusing on the independent parties. What would be the best steps for them to start taking or to take to build the best coalition, just so that they can start the process to build the notoriety even more so, to get their point across, get their message out? What is the best method of building a coalition?
Coalition with whom?
Well, with anyone that they would want to partner with. And I pose that question because it makes me think about the thing that I ask the question about all the time, which is, if a person is going to run for a position, of course, we need to see what they're capable of doing beforehand. And one of the things that I think we're faced with, or one of the challenges that a lot of people think about with this upcoming election, is no matter who actually wins, what are going to be their ways or strategies of building a coalition? Because ultimately, that's what we need, because each cycle, it seems like we have the same issue of one person, the president gets elected, and then he has so much opposition, or maybe she will have so much opposition in this particular case, possibly. So how does a person get in position after looking at this particular election cycle season, which is the most controversial one that I believe any of us probably will ever see or have seen? But how do you, either side, how do you wake up the next morning and be president and think about, how do I start to work with people now? Because it's not just your party. So how do you build these coalitions, which is necessary to get the actual work done?
Yeah.
It's called horse trading.
Yeah.
Well,
That's what we call it in the military.
Third parties tend not to get involved in that very much because the people who are attracted to third parties tend to be attracted to it for principled reasons.
Yeah, and
I know that Corey believes.
Yeah.
I think Corey believes you build a party from the grassroots.
Yeah.
Corey,
Well,
I think that
right, Corey? Yeah.
I think the problem number one is that the third parties don't get the type of press that they need to inform the American public. I think one of the things that, and I said this to Josh the other day when I spoke to him. Joshua invited me back to the Libertarian Party when he was running his last cycle for state senate. He was like, it's hard to build a party. I want to educate people on ballot access and teach people about the Libertarian Party. That was the whole reason why he called me. He said he wanted some help with his campaign. I did my best to help him, but I agree with his sentiments. Is that the people have to learn. It's like Markel, where you have a education system. The only way people are going to know about your education system that you advertise, and you use social media as an advertising vehicle. It's great, but if people don't click your link and try to figure out what you're offering, they're never going to learn about you. So I think the first thing is that the Libertarians, Greens, the Constitution Party, and everybody else have to get to a point where they can speak to the public. The second thing is what Jeff always says. They have to be included in the debates, whether we start our own debate like we did this cycle with Talks Over Drinks, giving, respect to Tom White, who's no longer with us, but wanted to do something like that. But also the ability of getting people heard. And we don't do that enough.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And it's also an issue when you talk about building coalitions, like the Libertarian Party working with the Green Party, or the Liberation Party or whatever. But that means if you're a libertarian, you're supposed to be working hand in hand with people who are Marxists. And you sort of have to put aside your principles. Like, I agree with like maybe getting the Green Party to have ballot access and be heard on the debate stage, but it's hard for me to form I don't want to say form a friendship, but to form an alliance with somebody who wants to take away my guns, raise my taxes, infringe on my free speech, take away my rights to personal property, infringe on my right of school choice, infringe upon how to invest for retirement, tell me that I have to join a union, et cetera, just to defeat the big parties. Because then you're trying to defeat the big R and the big D, but then you're sort of hooking up with somebody who's sort of worse in a way. I'm not articulating it very well, but I think you guys know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I think an example is of the what's the other, I can't remember, the Forward Party. It's like I get these emails from the Forward Party, but I feel like the Forward Party is just an arm of the Democratic Party. And they always seem, at least in Northern Virginia, to support like socialist Democrats. So I know that in New York, the Libertarian Party kind of unified with the Forward Party. That's why I got wind of them. But when I read about the Forward Party, I'm like, I'm not sure if I agree with their perspectives.
Yep. That's right.
I can understand that. And I mean, when I ran for office last year, I actually did reach out to a handful of different parties. I actually did speak with the Forward Party, and they seemed to be interested in my candidacy. And then something happened, and then they didn't anymore. But I did speak with them. I spoke with a group called the Alliance Party. Actually ended up not seeking their endorsement at the end of the day, because some of the requirements to get their endorsement didn't sit too well with me. But and heck, I mean, when I ran for office last year, I actually did a joint mailer with the Democratic candidate because the Republican incumbent refused to participate in the debates because I was there. And so, I mean, it's a weird dynamic, to be certain, because of course, you know, as libertarians,
You mean Obenshain refused? That's awful.
What's that?
You mean Obenshain wouldn't debate you?
That's correct. Yes.
That's awful.
He was. My understanding is he actually initially agreed to some of the debates, but then when he heard I was going to be there, he always found some excuse not to be.
Wow.
Which was, you know, and we actually had debates where we also had House of Delegates candidates, and the Republicans showed up. I mean, every Republican showed up to the debates except for Mark Obenshain, which, you know, it's funny. I didn't think my opinion of Obenshain could get worse, but the fact that he wasn't even willing to engage in, I would say, basic civics made me think far less of him at the end of the day.
Yep. I agree with you reluctantly.
I mean, and unfortunately,
I'm glad that it was, you know, I think that third party people can bring something to the table, and they should bring something to the table. I also think that it's important with the Libertarians considering rebuilding their party in Virginia that there would be a lot of emphasis on local candidates. They've got to get some wonky person, and probably wouldn't be me. I might be willing to help somebody else do it, but I couldn't do it myself. But there's a lot of elections in localities for school board and board of supervisors, city, town council, where sometimes there's not enough candidates to fill the ballot. So somebody runs as a write-in and gets elected. And that's an opportunity for a libertarian to actually hold office and to do something. And that's how people rise in the two major parties. They do something at a local level most of the time, unless they got gobs of money or something. They do something at the local level, and then they might run for state representative or state senator, and then they run for a national office. And that's what the libertarians ought to be thinking about. But I do think that, and I think the libertarians. I don't know that much about the green activists, and they're really cool people as people, but I don't know that people would take them seriously enough to seriously vote for them, except maybe in a college town like Madison, Wisconsin or something. As a protest, you all go out and vote for the, you know, I sometimes wonder whether some of these local elections, like city council, whether there would be some emphasis toward not the ranked choice voting, but the cumulative voting that they do in corporations, where you have 100 shares of stock, so you have 100 votes. And so what you can do is you can say, I want all of my 100 votes to go to one person. And I think it becomes, instead of voting for 9 people that are on the ballot, you cast off your vote for 9. You would cast 9 votes for 1. And that way you have a better chance of maybe getting in. That might solve some of the racial disparities that sometimes happens in city councils, town councils, and things like that. I don't think that would be workable at a higher level. But maybe small towns might open the door for some diverse viewpoints. But I've already talked a lot, so please pardon my. Hopefully, it's been interesting. But
well, you know, when you speak, it's always interesting, Sandy. Let me ask you, what do you guys feel about ranked choice voting? How do you feel like ranked choice voting would either help or hurt independent parties with getting votes to actually get placed in office?
Some states already have it. I believe Maine does. I think Maine does. Now, I don't know if they do for presidential elections, but They do for, I think, their governor and their state houses. You can choose, like if there's a Republican, a Democrat, and a Libertarian running, and you want to vote for the Libertarian, but you're afraid that it'll help the worst Republican win or the worst Democrat win. You can vote number 1 Libertarian, number 2 Republican, and number 3 Democrat. And from what it was explained to me, there's 2 different ways that ranked choice voting can work. There's one where they count your first choice, and if your first choice doesn't win, I think it goes to your second choice. And then there's another way where if one candidate doesn't get more than 50% of the votes, then they have to have a runoff between the other 2 or something like that. There's more than one way to do ranked choice voting. I can't really, I'm having a hard time articulating it. I think Joshua might understand it better than I do.
Well, yes, I think ranked choice voting would be a very good thing here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. I mean, heck, because we have 6 candidates for president. Now, to be fair, I don't know a whole lot about all 6 of the candidates because, of course, again, there are 6 of them, and I found one that I liked. That being, I already voted. I voted for the Libertarian candidate. But would there be third-party candidates I'd prefer over Trump and Harris? I believe there would be. And yes, I think it would help people to say, well, I'd vote. Well, heck, when I ran for office, as somebody asked me this last time, they said, well, aren't you afraid by you being on the ballot that you're going to help the Democrats win? And I thought, well, if you understood the history of the district, that's not very likely. I mean, we haven't had a Democratic state senator since before I was even born.
Right. Well, even
yeah. So, but
well, you have to earn the votes, and they do too.
Absolutely. Well, that's another thing. People have to realize, people say, oh, you're going to waste your vote or something like that, or you're going to help somebody else win. But at the end of the day, your vote belongs to you. And, whoever you want to give it to, it's not owned by a political party. They don't automatically have first call over it. And like a candidate doesn't say, well, you owe me your vote. I mean, that's not how it should be. That's maybe how it is in Russia. Yep. I don't know. Mm-hmm. But so people have to realize, take ownership of their vote and say, vote for who you think you want to see win. I mean, there's no prize at the end of the day. Oh, I voted for the person who won. Okay, well, good for you. You don't get any special bonus as opposed to the rest of us who voted for somebody else.
Right. That's right. Well, I think ranked choice voting is great for primaries because it forces the people to form coalitions, and you're less likely to criticize and be mean and hateful to somebody whose votes you might need in that second round. But I think in general elections, although the civics behind it sounds great, I think in practice what happens is that I think it allows members of a party that knows they're not going to win, like the Democrats in Alaska, are able to use their ranked choice for mischief to prevent the Trump Republican from getting it. So they all voted for Murkowski because they could live with some of her positions on the issues. Now, I think there are people, if they were here tonight, who would say, that might be good because it might force the parties to be more moderate in the candidates that they select. But I also think that the parties have the right to select the people they want to. I might not like it when Chap Peterson doesn't win, but I like it a lot maybe when somebody like Tom Garrett wins. So it's So I don't know how to make of that. I think, like I said, in a primary, it's great. But I think in the general election, it causes too much mischief.
It sounds like a lot of the argument for having an open primary versus a closed primary. In Pennsylvania, when they have a Democrat primary, only Democrats or Republicans can vote in their primaries. They're closed. In Virginia, you don't register by party. So I think what happened last time, I believe Eddie Garcia or Jonathan Emort would have been a better candidate for the Republican to run against Tim Kaine rather than Hung Cao. And I can't prove it, but I think that what happened is, since Tim Kaine was already the nominee of the Democrats, he's the incumbent, that a
Yes.
lot of Democrats voted for Hung Cao because they knew he would be easier for Tim Kaine to beat. So you sort
That
of,
could be.
I think it's a sabotage thing. It happened back in '89. Do you remember when Marshall Coleman, Stan Paris, and Paul Tribble ran for governor against Wilder?
Yes, I remember
And a
that
lot of
primary well.
the Democrats jumped in and voted for Stan Paris because he was the most radical and the easiest one for Doug Wilder to defeat. And the strategy worked. And the Republicans have done it as well to Democrats. The Democrats do it more.
Yes,
but
and
the
Marshall Coleman
Republicans,
ended up winning.
yes.
The Democrats do it more, and I've heard Republicans talk about the same thing.
Well,
in
Marshall Coleman
1989
lost. Marshall Coleman lost, didn't he?
No,
lost
he
to
was
Doug-
nominated, but he lost to
Oh,
Wilder.
yeah, he
but
lost
it was
to Doug
by
Wilder,
a
yeah.
hair.
Yeah.
It was
But
almost. He
that was very
almost got
close.
it. It was very close. It was probably less than 1%.
Yeah.
And
But
if you remember, it seemed like there was another candidate in the race or something too.
there was, and that was
There
my
was a third
was it
candidate that was taking votes. So it might have even been 4 candidates, but
might have been Russ Potts, I think, but that was when I first moved to Virginia. 89
Yeah.
was the first election I voted for in Virginia after
Yes.
I moved here from Pennsylvania. But yeah, I mean, the ranked choice voting, I kind of like it. Like Sandy said, it sounds great in theory. It sounds like a very civic minded idea, but I just think that the practice of it, if they're going to do it right, it would probably work. But how do you do it right? That's the
right.
problem with some of these
where
things.
people are going to put, because that's right. The Democrats are sabotaging. I've always favored, if you're going to do it, if you're going to have party registration, which is a big bugbear of Obenshain. He's been trying to get it for a long time. He's got nowhere with it. But the party registration would work like this. You would register by party. And then if you are a Democrat, you vote in the Democrat primary. If you're a Republican, you vote in Republican primary. But I would allow the independents to vote in either or any primary.
Well, and that's
that
a part
way
of the
you're
issue.
drawing in people who maybe have different views. You can draw them in and start building that winning coalition in the primary.
But
because you draw independents in.
And I've of course debated Obenshain on the issue of party registration. I mean, I don't believe it's a legitimate function of the state government to know whether or not you're in a political party. And I find it horribly immoral to have closed primaries whereby, somebody's running for, a party nominates their candidate and you can't vote in the primary because you're an independent and it's only allowed to be Republicans or Democrats. And I know that exists in various states. At the end of the day, the state government should not be involved in determining who a political party nominates as their candidate. We should go back to, whatever happened to nominating by conventions.
Well, that's usually what they do in Virginia now. A lot of times they have a caucus or a convention.
Mm-hmm.
They're not allowed to have conventions anymore. Joe Morrissey thought of that. He got a bill passed that said there were no more conventions except for statewide candidates because the convention process was abused by different people. I don't know about the Democrats, but the Republicans sure abused the convention process. I think Chris Peace would probably say Scott Wyatt abused the process, and I'm not sure the people's will. I liked Scott, and I wanted Scott to win. But as you remember, as Corey might remember, I covered that for Virginia Right. That whole thing. That's why I didn't participate in that, because I was covering it for the right.
Scott
and it was
Wyatt is my
fascinating to
delegate.
me how that worked out.
He's
But
my
I
delegate.
think conventions can be bossed very easily.
But who does Joe Morrissey think he is talking to people about abuse? I mean,
well, I found
I didn't want to touch
be
that.
Joe Morrissey's very fascinating, and I wish somebody would write a book about Joe Morrissey, because at one time he was the Commonwealth's attorney for the city of Richmond.
I met him,
but
before.
He was always flamboyant. He had he had girlfriends who were younger than his daughters. He's very interesting. He's a very interesting, fascinating, flamboyant I think he almost lived in the wrong state for that kind of thing.
He could make a really good Lifetime movie, don't you think?
Oh, miniseries. Miniseries.
I will
Because
tell
you
you
know he went with
that.
that girl who was 17.
I saw them when
And
I was
by
in
the way,
Mexico. I was in
I
Mexico at the airport, and
met
we
that
saw Joe
girl.
Morrissey.
That girl was not stupid or ignorant. She's very smart and very attractive and very charming. And I told her, I said, I started to say Michelle Obama, but I think I said some other black female leader. I said, you could be something like the mayor of Richmond if you wanted to be. I said, you got it. You got all the qualities to be very successful in politics. But it's somebody's got to talk to a pretty girl sometimes, right, Corey? It's a tough job, but
I will say that Mandy and I did go to Joe Morrissey and Myrna's wedding. We have been very close with Joe Morrissey and Myrna over the years. They always call us to invite us to political functions when he was running. So, we very, very interesting couple,
they're not together anymore, Corey.
Oh
I
no!
don't believe it. I don't believe it.
No, this is why Joe Morrissey lost all those elections, because Myrna left him for a younger man. And now I don't know what the details were. Okay, I'm not trying to spread gossip, but they're not together, and they haven't been together. And he's been trying to keep that quiet because they had a bunch of kids. And I always had a theory that one of the reasons why Joe Morrissey did so well with especially young, let's say the Joe Six Pack, and there were a lot of them, and I think part of the reason was sort of crude and carnal. He got this younger girl and he got her pregnant and they had a bunch of kids, and so he must be doing something. And he's older than me. And
Is he still in office?
Okay.
No.
And,
is he still in office?
He got his licenses taken from him.
No,
right?
he lost all the elections because I think what happened is the Joe Six-Pack voter realized. Now, Joe Morrissey's pro-life, and he's one of the few pro-life Democrats, and they ganged up on him because of the abortion question, and he was out. But I think he could have survived if he could have stayed with Myrna, because he would have still had that young six-pack voter, the kind of people that tend to vote for Trump.
I was just about to say that he was the test.
Some of the young blacks are voting for Trump this time. They didn't the last time. But it's interesting to me, and I think a lot of those people that he was drawing into was black, because of course Joe Morrissey's very, very white, and Myrna is black. And I'm shocked I didn't get invited to that wedding, Corey, because I'm glad that you and Mandy went to that. It was I tried to get him to support me for judge, but he wouldn't do it. So
very, very interesting. So I'm going to ask everybody, as we're talking about all these various topics, election picks. Who do we think is going to win? And as we all look at the Libertarian Party, what percentage do you think Chase Oliver and Mike Termott are going to get? I'm going to start with you, Markel. What do you think?
What percentage? I think that the independents are going to get the least amount of percentage that they've gotten in a long time. I think it's such a Trump Kamala race that I think people only have those two on their mind. So whatever the percentage that independent candidates have gotten in the past on average, I look to see that being far less, because I think people are so torn between just the two that they don't want to take any chances. Unfortunately, I haven't been looking into too many of the stories, but I've seen flickers of Kamala with such large leads in certain areas and stuff like that. I'm not sure how true that is. I don't know how big the gap is between her and Trump, but from the independent standpoint, I don't see people considering them, because this is such a pivotal and dramatic season for these with these two candidates. I would say, shoot, I was more excited by the VP debate. I like the VP candidates' performance, and I believe I even told Corey that, man, if those were the two choices for president, it might be a different kind of discussion because they handled themselves in the debate a little bit at a higher standard, I would say.
Wow. Okay, Josh, what's your pick, sir? What do you think the people are gonna do, and what do you think the Libertarians and the Greens are gonna accomplish this election cycle percentage wise?
Do you mean nationwide, not just Virginia, right?
That's correct.
Well, when it comes to the Libertarians, unfortunately, the Libertarian Party's leadership is in quite a bit of a mess right now. The chair of the National Libertarian Party has more or less come out for Donald Trump, and before that, she was, doing fundraisers with RFK Jr. So I don't think it's going to be a particularly good year for the Libertarians. I would, I sort of a number that pops into my head, probably maybe like 1.6% of the vote nationwide. And I don't know. Will Jill Stein get better than that? I would say she'll probably get somewhere around that as well. And then, of course, the other third party candidates further down the list, the ones that aren't on the ballot in enough states to actually win, probably a little lower still. I mean, but yes, I think a lot of people, as has already been said in this election, are probably going to vote either against Donald Trump or Kamala Harris by voting for the other one. It's just the lesser of two evils, I'm afraid.
Dandy, your thoughts?
Well, I think I'm going to stick my neck out and say, first, to answer your question, I think Trump is going to win the election. Overall, Kamala may still get the popular vote, but I think it will be closer. I think that we could see, I think that I'm afraid that Chase Oliver, in my view, did not make a good impression on a lot of people. He's a left libertarian, and he supported things like kids and drag queens, and I just think he alienated anybody that might be a Trump supporter that would be inclined to say, boy, I'll vote for him as a protest. So I actually think that with the possibility that Jill Stein's going to get a decent vote in Dearborn, I'm actually thinking that Stein might get more votes than the Libertarian, but it's not going to be high. I mean, Stein might get 600,000 and Chase will get 500,000, but I don't think Chase is going to do as well as Joe Jorgensen did. I am going to stick my neck out a little bit and say that there is the possibility that the Arkansas House of Representatives District 75 will go to the Libertarian, and his name is Michael White. So that's probably the best chance to get a state representative. All the people in Wyoming didn't get Michael Burt didn't get reelected. So he's out and he's not running this time. So I also think that there's a fellow in South Dakota named Gideon Oates. He's the vice chairman of the South Dakota Libertarian Party. We need to get Gideon on Talks Over Drinks sometime because he's a fascinating fellow. And Gideon's running for a statewide office this time in South Dakota. I don't think he's going to win, but it's interesting that South Dakota's ballot access is based upon any statewide getting 2.5% in either of the last two elections. Now, I think they're safe because I think the last time when somebody ran for Congress, the Libertarian got 20-something%. I also think that the Libertarian candidate in North Carolina governor may do surprisingly well. The ballot access is in North Carolina is 2%, or you're on the ballot in 35 states or more. So so the Libertarians may be safe for ballot access in North Carolina, but I think the Libertarian will get because the Republican got so disenchanted. I'm thinking there might be just enough disenchanted Republicans that might take a look. And finally, I think I think that independence guy is going to win. And I think it's going to force the issue of people talking about, first off, Puerto Rico is not going to become a state. And second, I think independence is now going to be, I think when he goes to Washington, D.C. and talks to people, he's going to have an audience to talk, because he's going to be the governor of Puerto Rico. And he's going to have an audience to talk about Puerto Rico becoming independent and why it should. And I think that's a debate that the country needs. And, there may be a surprise or two in some other places, but I do think it's a bad year, because you're right. Everybody for president is thinking, who do I not want?
Mm-hmm.
And Kamala wins, it's going to be because more people said I don't want Trump. And if Trump wins, it's going to be because more people said I don't want Kamala. So it's going to be a nail biter. It might take several days. But that's kind of how I see it.
I got you, Jeff. You want to sum it up? How do you feel?
I'll put my neck on the chopping board a little bit. I think that it is the year of the double haters. The double haters are people who don't really like Trump. They don't like Kamala. As a pragmatic person, I look at it as, well, who's going to do the least amount of damage? Trump is 78 years old. He's one Big Mac away from cardiac arrest. Kamala Harris is 20 years younger, appears to be in good health. Trump can only serve one more term and he's done. Provided he lives that long, he's done. She could serve two full terms and do a hell of a lot more damage. If Trump wins, he's probably going to be saddled with a Congress who's hostile to him. If Kamala wins, she's likely going to bring the House and the Senate with her. So then she would have a lot more, she could, have a lot more time to do more damage. But nevertheless, my prediction is that the Libertarian Chase Oliver is going to get 0.5% to 1.5%, somewhere in there. Jill Stein might get a 0.25 percentage point less. I think Jill Stein's going to do very well in Michigan, because the Kamala Harris campaign is running ads against Jill Stein. Jill Stein is an anti-Semite. She, is like pro-Hamas and anti-Israel and all that. She's going to get a lot of the Michiganistan, as they call it, vote up there. But, those people aren't going to vote for Trump. They might vote Harris. I don't see them voting for Trump, because Trump is very pro-Israel and there's a lot of that going on. But whichever way Pennsylvania goes, I think the whole nation is going to go. If Trump wins Pennsylvania, he's almost a shoo-in. It doesn't matter what some of the other, if he wins maybe Pennsylvania and Arizona, if he wins 2 out of the 7, he's probably going to win the electoral vote. I still think he's either going to lose the popular vote or it's going to be very close. And I think that when all this is said and done, provided there's no cheating and, thousands and thousands of mail-in ballots they find later, if we can get this thing wrapped up in 4 or 5 days, I think it's not going to be the end of the problems in the country. But I think people will, there's probably going to be some riots somewhere, but I think people are going to breathe a sigh of relief. We're going to bite our tongue. We're going to sludge through the next 4 years. And then in 2028, I hope that the Libertarian Party fixes its internal problems. And I hope that the Democrats and the Republicans both run much better candidates. But yeah. I think it's going to be close. But I don't think the Libertarian is going to do that well, not because Chase is a bad guy, but so many people don't know who he is, and people don't want to feel like they're throwing away their vote. I hate that expression, but people are like, well, I have to vote against Trump or I have to vote against Harris. Chase is a great guy. I like but he can't win. And I don't want Harris. I don't want Trump. And I think that's where we are right now. But like I said, it's going to be very close. And Trump's probably going to win. If he wins Pennsylvania, he'll win the electoral votes. And but he's still probably going to lose the popular vote, or it's going to be very close. That's my prediction.
So I think it's gonna be Trump. Um, I've seen Chase Oliver speak. I was able to watch the debate with him and Warnock when he ran for governor of Georgia. Um, I want to see both him and Mike and some of the other people that Sandy talked about remain as activists to keep the party, moving. It's sad that people are activists. Eva, be quiet. Come here. People are activists and then they disappear when their election is over. They gone. And I think what Josh and everybody's saying about the condition of the Libertarian Party, like we need all of the activists that we can get in order to keep people motivated to want to do the work. I had the ability to talk to Bill Redpath this evening, and one of the things he told me was, do what you think is good for you. If it's not good for you, don't do it. And the other thing that Dr. James Lark told me is, Corey, you got to be kind to people because at one point in time, you were lost too. So, as we're trying to bring people to liberty, we have to be kind-hearted to them. We have to talk to them about the issues, and we have to kind of meet them where they are. They may not be in a perfect, hold on, guys. Man, Jesus Christ.
Not his fault.
You want me to drive? man, he's about to go off the road.
Oh,
Have to take the tractor off the road. Yeah, so I think it's gonna be Trump. I think Chase is gonna get 1.8. I don't know about Jill Stein and Cornel West, but it has indeed been a very interesting cycle, like Markel has said. And like one of my other truck driving mentors, Don from Truth Hip Hop, says, the day after election day, we're all going to go to work again the next day. They're not going to change anything, so we can all stay home, So it is going to be what it's going to be. But I appreciate you gentlemen for joining me tonight as we're driving through rural Arkansas. I'm glad I was able to keep a connection. And like I said,
You might be in the 75th district there.
Yeah, I know. I have
North
to.
Little Rock.
But we're working on the Elon Musk internet so that we don't have any issues in the future. But again, my name is Corey Fauconier. As always, my partner in justice, the guy Markel Prines, my brother of another color, Jeff Kleb, my libertarian brother, Josh Huffman, and everybody's favorite Nazarene attorney, Elwood Sandy Sanders. We are Talks Over Drinks, and we remind everybody that it is never too early or too late, regardless of what time zone you're in, for Talks Over Drinks. Cheers.
All right, let's talk over drinks.
Talks over drinks.